Welcome back, grade 4s to WorksheetCloud.com's online lessons. And I hope that you had a good night's rest last night and that you are ready to get into this lesson today. So today we are going to be looking at newspaper articles. I was thinking that we're surrounded by a lot of news and events that are happening now, especially related to the coronavirus. And I know some of you are quite stressed out and worried, and you're thinking about what's going to happen next, which gave me the idea to actually go through some newspaper articles and think of the elements of a newspaper article so that when you do read, you can look out for these things and still learn. Okay, so I think that's a pretty cool idea. I hope that you are excited, grade 4s, and also I don't think that you actually need a pen or pencil or page today. I would like you just to concentrate and read and watch so that you can understand how you can identify the elements of a newspaper article when you see them now. And I know that a lot of you are going to see quite a few newspaper articles. So without wasting any more of your time, grade 4s, let's get started. If you have any questions about this lesson or any of my other lessons, please send an email to grade4@WorksheetCloud.com and we'll get back to you as soon as we can after this lesson. So today, grade 4s, we are looking at newspaper articles like I mentioned in the introduction. And the lesson outline for today, we're going to be going back to conjunctions. Remember in my last lesson, well, not the previous one, the previous one, I told you that we're going to be looking at conjunctions again because they can be a bit complicated and I didn't want you to feel overwhelmed in that lesson. So we're going to go back, instead of doing sentence today, we're going to go back and just touch on conjunctions again. Then we're going to recap nonfiction because today's topic is based on nonfiction, newspaper articles on nonfiction texts. So we're going to recap nonfiction and then we are going to look at what is a newspaper article and the elements of newspaper articles. Conjunctions. So we have coordinating conjunctions and these words are like says in the word fanboys. Okay, so when we think of the word fanboys, we think of for, and, nor, but, or, yet. So these are the coordinating conjunctions. Then we have subordinating conjunctions. Okay, and there's a long list over here of the different kinds of subordinating conjunctions. I thought that it was interesting to note, grade 4s, to take note of that these are the ones that when you see them in a text or you are reading them or you have to have an activity based on them, that you know the different kinds of conjunctions. So words like after, although, as far as if. And here there's quite a few with as, and then because is a subordinating conjunction, which is also a very popular one. Before, even if, when, where, wherever, even though, every time, if, in order that, since, so, also a very popular conjunction. So that, than, though, unless, until, whenever, whereas, and while. Subordinating conjunctions. And then the last one we am in your way with, the last one is correlative conjunctions, which actually refer to kind of a relationship between things, okay? And that is either or, not only but, also, neither or nor. So these are the conjunctions that kind of compare two things together or relate two things together, two sentences together. And then coordinating conjunctions. And I feel that it's important for me to go back to this because I said that fanboys is the acronym that tells you about the coordinating conjunctions. And an acronym is taking the letters from the beginning of words and making it into one whole word. For those of you that seen my lesson on summaries, whip, okay, whip your sticks into shape That was an example of an acronym as well. So the conjunction is here on the side, which spells out the word fanboys, and they give you an example for each of them. And I thought that it might be useful for you, grade 4s, for me to go through these examples with you. So 4, we listened eagerly, for he brought news of our families. And she didn't speak to anyone, and nobody spoke to her. No, I don't expect children to be rude, nor do I expect to be disobeyed. But they rushed to the hospital, but they were too late. Or I will go shopping, or I will go camping. Yet Kelly was a convicted criminal, yet many people admired him. And so I was feeling hungry, so I made myself a sandwich. So here we have it, grade 4, some examples of using coordinating conjunctions in a sentence. And here is the list of examples when you are trying to remember or think how you can use a conjunction in a sentence. I hope this makes sense, grade 4. Right, over here we have nonfiction. And over here I've placed 2 pictures again on the screen. And there are more. Okay, so now we're looking at nonfiction. And over here I've included some pictures of the different kinds of nonfiction text that you can get. Namely autobiographies or biographies, the daily news, reports, and there are many more. So I wanted us just to kind of recap on yesterday's lesson. Yes, this is yesterday's lesson about how nonfiction relates to us, how we can think about it when we are looking at it. And nonfiction, again, based on factual evidence. It's true, it's fact. And it's written in a very non-biased way, okay, most of the time. Obviously, if you're trying to persuade someone to do something, you're going to kind of you're going to be biased. You're going to talk about how it affects you and how you want people to see it. Kind of a point of view. So with nonfiction, it's really based on factual evidence. That sets it apart from fiction, okay? Because when you read fiction, you already know, hey, this doesn't sound like it actually ever happened. And then non-fiction is based obviously on things that happen with people and directly around you, like current events. So non-fiction is based on fact. Simple as that. And that's what I wanted to just relate to you when we move on to our topic for today, which is newspaper articles. So what is a newspaper article? A news article discusses current or recent news of either general interests, like daily newspapers, or of a specific topic, i.e., political or trade news magazines, club newsletters, or technology news websites. So what does this mean in terms for you, grade 4s, is that newspaper articles discusses news. And I'd like to bring it back to our current events now, which is the coronavirus that we are facing. As you know, there are lots and lots of newspapers that write articles about this, about scientists, what the scientists have said so far, how many cases we have so far in South Africa or the Western Cape. They are discussing these things continuously in newspaper articles. Why? They are trying to inform the audience or the readers about what's happening with regard to this, and that's important. And newspaper articles are important because they inform the readers, they inform people about the current events or the recent events that's happened now in their country or in their city or in the world. Because the coronavirus is a global pandemic, which means that everyone is suffering in the world. And we have to now know and keep up to date with these kind of current events. So yes, newspaper articles take important factual information and they publish it into a newspaper article like the Times Live, for example, or if you're thinking of the Daily Voice is also a newspaper article. The Cape Times newspaper article, or not articles, but newspapers, the Southern Mail. Those are all examples of the different kinds of newspapers you can get. And it obviously can either be international news or it can be local news that's specific to your city or your country. Now, why newspaper articles are important? It's the written word. And when you are reading it, you have to kind of have an idea of what the elements are to writing a newspaper article. And the reason for that is that when you need to write a newspaper article, you know how. So the more newspaper articles you read, grade 4s, the better you will get at writing one when it eventually happens. And over there, I have an article for you to look at. It's just one taken off to show you how a newspaper article could possibly look. And this newspaper article is actually taken from the UK. So it isn't a local newspaper for us, but it's news based on the UK. So elements of a newspaper article. And over here, I've chosen a newspaper article that's current to our country, okay? And the science, so when should SA's children go back to school is the headline. And the science suggests that COVID-19 may pose less direct harm to SA's youth than school closures. And there we have the date and who it's written by. And there's a nice picture of some kids, and then we have the actual newspaper article after this. So this is a picture taken directly from one of the newspaper articles written in South Africa. And we're going to look at this as, we're going to take from here, we're going to look at the elements of a newspaper article. So the first thing that we look at is the headline, okay? A short, powerful, eye-catching headline must indicate the main ideas of the article. So when you're writing your headline or you're looking at the headline must stand out to you. You can't look at the headline and still kind of have to figure out, I wonder what this newspaper article is about. Because remember, you want to draw the audience to read what you are writing about. So it must be eye-catching. It must have the main idea in it. So in this headline, when should SA's children go back to school? It basically tells you what the article is about. It's about when children should go back to school. So if a teacher or parents are interested in that, they know that this is what they must read. If they're wondering when children should go back to school, the headline already tells them that. And they don't have to read the entire article to kind of figure out what this is about. And then the name of the journalist and the date. When you see a newspaper article, the name of who wrote it is very important. And also the date that it was written, because news changes all the time. So this article was written on the 6th of May 2020. So it was relevant on the 6th of May 2020. In the next 6-7 months, it might not be as relevant then as it is now. So that's important, and it's the reason why we write dates on our newspaper articles. Because 3 years ago, if you were reading about a lion that was roaming in Gauteng or in the roads, it's not happening now. So people will get freaked out and wonder, oh my word, where's the lion? But in actual fact, it happened 3 years ago. So that's important for you to write down the date when you're busy writing your newspaper article. And also check the date when you are reading a newspaper article, just so that you don't get scared or confused when you see something that's actually not happening now. The tone is unbiased and impersonal. So depending on the type of newspaper that you are reading, the article should have an unbiased tone, because you're basically trying to inform the audience. Your purpose is to take the factual evidence that you've gotten from your various sources, whether it be a witness or whether it be somebody that has expertise in the article. You need to name that person and have an unbiased view and try and allow the audience to make up their own minds. But that's the ideal, grade 4s. That's not always what happens. Sometimes in a newspaper article, the writer actually does express his or her views as they are writing. but I'm giving you a general idea of the newspaper article. The focus is on facts and relevant news. So like I've mentioned about the date as well, it's about the current events that are happening now. Most newspaper articles or newspapers focus on the current events that's affecting the city, the country, or the world at the moment. And that's what they write about. They send their journalists out to talk to people that will know more about it. Let's give you an example. When it comes to the coronavirus, they speak a lot of the time to medical doctors, to scientists, so that they can get information and try and see if they can give and inform the readers more about this virus, about the vaccine or possible treatments, etc. And they won't go and interview, for example, a teacher based on his or her views on whether the virus is in the body or how you get it. Okay, they won't speak to a teacher about that because they would rather speak to a scientist, somebody that is studying the virus and is able to give them more information about it. And they would interview a teacher about school though. Okay, so they would interview a teacher about how to teach a curriculum or how to do planning. So when you are writing a newspaper article and interviewing people, it must be people that are relevant to the actual topic that you are going for. People's names are mentioned for authenticity. Again, in a newspaper article, you'll see and take direct quotes from different people so that can make your article authentic and real. It's not a made-up person, so it's not going to be Cinderella was at the ball. No, it's going to be Miss Smith said that she saw the burglar jumping out of the window. So we are going to name the people in our newspaper articles to give it that factual authenticity. Okay, so that's also important when you are reading that newspaper article. Note how people are named in a newspaper article, especially when they are being quoted. Okay, and they are usually in columns. So that's how you can actually differentiate a newspaper article to a different kind of text. Because when you see a newspaper article, they are written in columns. There's a space for each paragraph or a few paragraphs in each line. So you kind of need to notice that when you're reading a newspaper article. And I think that's one of the very key features of a newspaper article. So remember, you can send any questions about this lesson to grade 4 at WorksheetCloud.com. An activity is provided for you on conjunctions after this lesson. Like I said, grade 4s, you did not need to write anything down for this lesson because it was an informative lesson about newspaper articles and how to identify the elements of a newspaper article. However, because I started with conjunctions and we were talking about how to identify and use conjunctions in sentences, I added in a conjunction activity after this lesson. So even though it says newspaper article, remember it's an activity on conjunction. And then grade 4s, just to clarify again, I want us to be very clear about the reason for this particular lesson. And it's basically to enlighten you and to help you understand a text type. When you are in class and your teacher's teaching you, they want to teach you a variety of text types. Okay, and you have started with a fable or story. They will teach you how to write a letter, which we've done already, and a diary entry, minutes. When you get older to grade 7, we look at minutes, we look at an agenda. And the reason I'm bringing this up to you is for you to understand that there are different texts that you need to learn how to write as you go into your different grades. So the only way to get better at writing a text or designing a text is to read more of it. So my suggestion, grade 4, is get your hands on some newspaper articles and read, okay? And try and see how you can see where the name of the journalist is and how the headline captures the audience and how the paragraphs are formed. And in that way, the more you read, the better you'll get at when you finally need to write it. I hope this makes sense, grade 4s. So, I hope that you enjoyed this lesson, grade 4s, as much as I did, because I really enjoyed talking about relevant and current news that's happening today. And I know it's things that are also worrying you and making you think. But I just want to leave you with this bit of encouragement. And that is, grade 4s, that even though we might have to stay at home and you're not quite sure when schools are going to open and there's so much uncertainty, remember that you have the power in you and you can control your thoughts and your decisions. Okay, so decide today to stay positive and stay strong, because you know what? Everything will be okay. So, from me, Miss Nicole Frank, again, goodbye.